everyone, welcome to Painting Crafty, and today I'm going to be painting and repurposing this tea set from just your regular old tea set and make it into a whimsical style Halloween decor piece. I have the teapot, the sugar container, as well as a creamer. Now I found these at my local thrift store. There's a little bit of stickiness from some glue, from leftover residue from tape. I'm going to use some Goo Gone to get rid of the tape residue, and then I'm going to go ahead and clean it with some mineral spirits, the whole piece, because who knows how long this piece has been sitting with nobody using it throughout the years. And then after I get it all cleaned, I'm going to take it outside and spray it for 2 coats of flat black paint to start the painting process. Well, let's get started. I can't wait to show you all the steps of how I repurpose this tea set into a whimsical style Halloween decor piece. The teapot I'm going to be making into Frankie, and I had a bunch of this green already in my studio, so I'm going to use that color for my Frankie. For the little creamer set, I'm going to be making it into a pumpkin, so I'm going to use the Waverly chalk paint color in pumpkin. And for the little sugar container, I'm making into a mummy, and I'm just going to base coat it Folk Art Decor white paint. On all 3 of my pieces, I had areas that I still wanted to be black in the end, and I didn't want to have to tape off those areas. So by using an angle brush, which has a nice little pointed tip on one end, I was able to easily paint around the black areas and not get a lot of extra paint on the top. But even if I did get a little extra paint on those black areas, I don't need to worry about it because I can go in the end and touch up because they're all base coated in a matte black paint, and you won't see where I go in and touch up at all. The paint colors I chose, most of them were going to be a little transparent, so I knew I was going to have to put on more than one layer to cover that black underneath. But often when you base coat items, it's better to put on a couple thinner layers of paint instead of one thick one. That way you would just get more of an even coverage, and in the end you're going to be happier with your base coat of paints. I use some paper brown sack to be able to sand in between my layers of paint. I crumple the sack, make it a little soft, and it's a perfect sanding tool so it doesn't go all the way down to the black paint. But it does get off those little nubbies that might happen on your layers. I like to sketch my faces on first before I paint them, and the Derwent watercolor pencils is my preferred drawing tool on top of these pieces. With it being watercolor, it can easily be erased in the end, but it's a nice soft color, and this one happens to be a Van Dyke Brown, which has a bonus. You can use it as a little bit of a shading quality because it's watercolor. It's going to kind of slightly melt into your painting and help you create shadows when you're painting. The beginning pieces I'm painting in, I basically do like a color book style, one color, and base coating those areas in. To do the shading for this piece, I use some Folk Art Floating Medium Agent. I load my brush with the agent, then just dip my corner into my brush, and then I'm going to go ahead and stroke that brush back and forth on my palette to blend it from one area of my brush to the other. And then when I go ahead and stroke down, it gives you a gradual blend of your colors from dark to light. Floating medium works really well for this, but there's other ways to create this look as well. My first float color, I used a color called Light Cinnamon in the Decor Art paint, and now I was going to be doing another color over the top in Deep Burgundy. It's nice to be able to do a double layer of floating. It just adds another depth to your painting when you add more colors of the float colors. I added the color called Burnt Umber around the edge just to darken up the ridge a little bit more, and while I was doing that, I happened to pick up a little bit of the color called Bright Orange, and I put some of that in the middle, and then it all changed. I decided I wanted that orange to be a lot more colorful. So I ended up picking up the colors, blending it in the middle pieces, adding even a darker sense of color on this piece. You can see me here adding a little bit more of that deep burgundy around in different areas, and I really do like that look. So I'm glad it was kind of a process of starting and then changing my mind in the middle and creating something completely different. Once I had the background all painted the way I wanted it to, I went back in and added some more white to my eyes and then painted the black area. I wanted my eyes to be looking up, so I put the dark areas towards the top. I made the nose in a similar shade of orange, just a little bit different, but to set those facial features off, I used some of the Burnt Umber to go ahead and create shadows around the outside of my eyes and around my nose. By adding these shadows, it's going to really add more depth, and my features on my face aren't going to look so flat. So it's well worth the time. Add those little tiny shadowing around your eyes and your facial features. To bring the eyes to life, I'm going to be adding a highlight color called Spa Blue. I'm going to be floating it on the dark side of my eyes. If I add the highlight on the right side of one, I need to add it to the right side of the other. And then to add even a sense of more sparkle, I'm going to be doing some dip dot dots with my stylus tool in white paint. All these little highlights are what's going to bring your face to life. These repurposed teapots are absolutely adorable, all painted. And there's an artist I love to follow. Her name is Billy, and her business is called So Stinkin' Cute. And it's so appropriate because her things are so stinking cute. And I had seen a Halloween set that she had done, and I really wanted to give it a try and put my little personal twist on it as well. And it was going to work perfect for, I'm a part of a YouTube collaboration today called My Coffee House. We have 4 hosts today. We have Monica with Up All Night DIY, Dawn with Shabby Meets Bling, Natalie with Sparks of Joy Studio, and Mary with The Painted Peach by Mary. You're going to find the links to their channels inside of my description box, as well as a playlist of all the other videos that everyone has contributed for today's playlist. So go ahead, check their channels out, and definitely click that playlist. I'm sure you're going to be inspired to do something fun for your home as well. You might be noticing I'm using a pencil. I love this Kimberly 9XXB pencil. It's a rather dark graphite style pencil. It almost has a charcoal quality. I love this to add the little bit of sketchy details that I like to add to my piece. And I like using it almost better than a paintbrush. Sometimes I don't feel as confident with my line work using a paintbrush, and I really love the quality of this pencil mark on these hand-painted pieces. This little guy's even going to get one more dose of cuteness by adding a few teeth in the front. And this small little flat brush worked perfect to add the teeth. Once they were dry, I went back in with my pencil and added a little bit more line detail just on one side of the tooth and then at the bottom. And it added the perfect little shadow detail for these small little teeth. And once I got this far, I realized I forgot to put any rosy cheeks on my characters. I love to add little rosy cheeks, and I have this one old scrubby brush that I've had in my studio forever. I'll probably keep it forever as long as it has bristles, but it works great for adding those little blushed areas. I put the paint on, scrub it on my palette, but then I always put it on my hand, and when it feels like the paint is dry, I know I have enough removed, and I can easily add those blush look cheeks to my characters. I most likely should have done this before I put the pencil on because I did get a little bit of graphite in my cheeks, but it's okay, it looks fine. And I did add some dip dots to the top of those cheeks just to add a little bit of sparkle to those as well. Up next, let's start working on that mummy. I had already drawn out all the faces for my characters, so I had an idea of what I wanted to create, but I wanted to go ahead and draw it first. So I found the center line, went down towards where I was going to be putting the eye patch first, and basically I was going to be painting in the eye patch and just the eyes. I would go back in and take my pencil as well and draw in some bandage areas of where I wanted the bandages because I knew I had to create kind of a pattern, so I needed an idea, and the watercolor pencil worked great to be able to sketch these items in with. Once I had the sketching, basic ones done, I went ahead and took some black paint and painted in the patch area where my eyes were. Again, this is just very much the color book step of just adding one single color to go ahead and base coat those first beginning areas in. So the background was going to be black, and I was going to be leaving my eyes white. This character, the eyes were going to be looking off to the one side. I had an idea of how I was going to have them set up as a grouping. So this one was kind of be looking at the other little jack-o'-lantern is what I think I'm going to be doing. Hopefully that makes sense. So the jack-o'-lantern eyes were pointing up because he's going to be looking at a spider in the end, and the little mummy is going to be looking at the jack-o'-lantern. Once I had the eye patch done and the eyes base coated in, I was going to go ahead and start doing the bandages. This particular one, I'm going to be doing a blending of colors in a different way. I'm not going to be using floating medium for this, but I'm going to be double loading my paintbrush. I'm going to be using the base color, which was white, but I'm using just an acrylic color in the Deco Art for my white this time. And then I'm going to be blending whatever my shading colors might be. I chose 2 different shading colors for my bandages. I'm using the colors in Deco Art. There's Thicket, which is kind of a blue-gray, and then I'm using Slate Gray as the gray color. And I'm going to be blending those colors across my bandages. I'm choosing kind of a shadow area where I want the shadow to be on my bandages. That's going to be the dark end of my paintbrush. And then the white one, by using the white, that's just going to blend the colors. Now, if you notice your colors are starting to drag, all you have to do is not add more paint, but add some water to your brush. And that's going to smooth your paint out and make more of a blended look. For my nose, I just ended up base coating it in a bright white color, and I was going to be adding shadows to that to help make it stand out from the face. And then I painted the black spots, and just after I did them, I realized I didn't paint them to look sideways. I put the black spots, making him look up. The way you position your black spots in your eyes does determine the area that your character will be looking. Oh well, I guess he's going to be looking at the teapot too. I did put a little bit of shadowing around all of the eyes, the top of the eyes, around the nose, and his little face. And at one point I had to giggle because I thought it looked like he had just a mask on, but I was able to soften all of the shadow colors by doing that same dry brushing technique. I took some white and then dry brushed all the bandage colors and some of the shadows, and it looks a lot softer, and he doesn't look so much like a little bandit. To add the sparkle to this character, I ended up using some white, but using water to float my color instead of the floating medium. And then to add just a little bit of hint of gray at the base of the black part of the eye, I used some of the slate gray and some of the water and created a small little water float underneath the eye. I also give this character some dip dots of bright white in the tops of his eyes and off to the side. Dip dots always add just a little bit of sparkle, and it's so easy to create using your stylus tool. This little guy gets some blush cheeks as well. I use that color Cactus Flower in Deco Art, and it's a nice rosy, kind of a corally color. And I'm going to be using my pencil again. I'm going to be giving some lashes at the top, and I also like to make kind of a curved line around my eye at the bottom and then come up with my lashes. I like that look of that creative line work, and I can also add more than just one line around my eye. I love loose line work on so much of my paintings, and I really do like doing it on these hand-painted items. It's something different besides just paint. It's adding a little bit of line work using a pencil. He still needed a mouth yet, and I made those little C marks of how wide I wanted my smile and where I wanted it to end. By doing the little C marks first, it gives my eyes something to focus on of where I'm going to be ending my smile. And then I can just make my line wiggly in the inside, and it really does add a whimsical nature to my characters. Now let's do Frankie. The watercolor pencils also come in white, and it works great to go ahead and sketch over the black using the white one, and it will erase as well using a Q-tip and some water. To do the sketch on my face, I switch back to the Van Dyke Brown. I find the center line and I just draw a line down, and that's going to help me build my face. I usually start with the nose and start with that area, and then I go ahead and I put my eyes in. You'll see me here just simply erasing the lines using some Q-tip and water. It works great, the watercolor pencils do, for sketching on these items. Nothing's permanent when you use your watercolor pencil. I begin the color book style painting for my eyes and for my nose. For my eyes, I just used white, but for the nose, I switched the colors called to citron green. It's a little transparenty, so I ended up having to add some white in it to make it a little bit more opaque. I wanted to create a dark green shadow around the edge of Frankie's hair, so I used the color in Deco Art called Evergreen, but loaded my brush first with the first color that I painted him with, and then just tipped the edge in the dark green color to create the shadow around Frankie's hair. I also used that same shadow around the handle area and at the base to go ahead and add even a little bit more depth in those areas. I did end up adding some of the darker green throughout Frankie's face. It was kind of the same way that the pumpkin developed. Frankie's face kind of developed too. I wanted to add even a darker shade of green around his eyes, so I took that evergreen color and I added just a little bit of black to it to create more of a black green, and I like that color of having just a little bit more black green around his eyes and his nose. I did add a little bit of color contouring for the inside of his nose too. I took that color, the evergreen, mixed it a little bit with the citron green, and created another version of green and stroked some of that color on the inside of his nose. So it didn't look so flat and it kind of helped blend in those darker shadows. I went ahead and I used some of that citron green color to add a little bit of blush of the green color inside of his eyes, and I used that brighter green color too to create the highlight color in the black area of his eyes. To soften some of those background colors, I took some of the citron green and did that dry brushing technique on this area as well, and just kind of softened those background colors, and the dry brushing does kind of bring your piece together. It's a nice little painting tip to remember when you're painting some items. Try some dry brushing if you want to bring your colors together. Here you can see me adding those bright highlights onto the dark part of his eyes, and I'm going to be adding the twinkle to his eyes by using some dip dots using my stylus, but because these eyes are really big, I end up using the end of my paintbrush to create a larger dot off to the other side. To add a little bit of twinkle to his nose, I do a dip drag technique with my stylus. I dip it in my paint, put it on the nose, and then once I have it down, I drag it slightly, and it makes a line where it's got a little bit of a dot and then a line, and then add just a few more little dots after it. Now let's get on to the pencil work. I wanted Frankie to have a big old unibrow. When I painted the whites of my eyes, I made the tops flat intentionally so I could wrap that unibrow up and around using my pencil lines. I love that look for this little character. I'm going to be doing the same type of idea where I'm sketching around my eyes, adding a few lashes at the top and the bottom, doing that swooping technique at the bottom and wrapping the eyelashes around. He does have a few scar marks on the side of his face. I use the pencil for that too and add the little stitch marks off to the sides. I go up to the top and add additional line work around his hair just to add a little bit more character to this. This character has a very big smile, and to help me draw my smile, I go ahead and I make little lines where my starting point is and where my ending point is for my smile. That really does help me determine and gives my eyes something to look at when I'm drawing my wonky smiles all the way across. So I put the line on one side and then take a look on the other side of where I want it to end, and then I can take my pencil and draw my wonky line and have something to look at and guide me as I'm drawing my smile. Hopefully you find this tip helpful. You could try it and see if it might work for you, but that's the way I like to draw my smiles. Frankie's also going to get some dip dots on his cheeks just to bring a little bit of highlight, and then I'm going to be adding one more step to him that I didn't do for the others. I'm going to be giving him a purple base on his little bottom to make it look like it's a festive Frankie, and I'm going to be using the color Purple Pizzazz, which is kind of a very translucent-y color, but it worked out okay because I didn't mind seeing a little bit of the black through the purple. Now that everything is all painted, it's time to do a little touch-up. I'm going to take the spray paint and spray it really close to this piece of plastic, and it's going to be a nice little puddle of color. Spray paint is an oil-based paint, so just use a brush you don't mind. You can just throw away at the end. I used this really small one. It helped me just kind of get in there and cover up any little area that I might need to touch up. And a bonus is because the paint is flat black paint, you're not going to notice any touch-ups at all. Well, let's take a look at what this adorable set looks like all together. If you're new to my channel and you like doing art and crafts, come on over and see what I'm doing. I'd love to have more creative friends join me. Leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed watching today's tutorial. If you liked this tutorial, here's a couple more videos you might want to check out. Well, thanks for joining me today, and hopefully you'll come back and join me again, and perhaps next time you'll create right along with me.